One fall, I spent a week in the Lake Clark National Park in south central Alaska, an area of over 4 million acres, located about 150 miles southwest of the city of Anchorage. It is only accessible by boat or plane, but fewer than 6,000 people come here each year. There were several grizzly bears stationed along the creek for the next several weeks after I arrived, and this would be a perfect opportunity for them to catch and eat wild salmon for the nutrition they would need to survive the coming winter months while they were in hibernation. They would not feed again until next spring. I was fascinated as I observed the instinctive motherly love between the mother and her cubs. As I watched the three bears, I imagined the cub with the lighter hair as having the name Athena, like the goddess of love and wisdom. This tale is told in her voice.
I'm Athena, a grizzly bear cub. My mom named me after the Greek goddess of wisdom so I'd be smart, and I am. My story really begins with fish, the Atlantic salmon, that is. Every fall, these salmon start their journey in the Pacific Ocean and swim upstream through the rivers of Alaska, returning to almost the exact spot where they were born years earlier. There, they mate, and then, before they die, they spawn, beginning the next generation of salmon. Their journey upstream is perilous. Besides sleeping over the boulders and waterfalls, the fish must avoid the waiting galleries of grizzly bears, who consider the fish their dinner menu, essential to keep their bellies full during the long winter's hibernation. The tale of our wonderful life, and the salmon, starts a few months ago in mid-April. It was so cozy in our winter den. My brother Zeus and I were born there this past January, but we never felt a thing there despite the long, bitter, cold Alaska winter. My brother is Zeus Jr., named after my dad. In Greek mythology, Zeus is the king of the gods. In other words, he's the boss. My brother already thinks he's a big shot, but I love him just the same. After the long winter, by April, the springtime sun was shining brightly. Green shoots were peeking through the melting snow, and the Silver Salmon Creek in Lake Clark National Park in Alaska was running strong from the mountains. This was the first time we two cubs saw the big world outside our den. "Come along, Athena and Zeus," urged our mother. "It's time for you to see the world around you." We were somewhat wobbly at first, but during the next few months, we cubs learned a lot. How to eat all sorts of foods beside our mother's milk, all the native berries, grasses, all kinds of vegetation, fresh clams from the river, even little field mice. We loved to play and tussle with each other. We seemed to have been born knowing that, even though my brother Zeus was bigger than me. That was reasonable. Our father weighed over 1,000 pounds, more than twice the weight of our mother. It was a lovely, fun-filled summer. Every day our mother reminded us, "Don't forget, Athena and Zeus, when the salmon come, we'll have to be able to catch our share and eat so we can make it through the winter." Whatever can she mean, we cubs thought at first, but soon we learned. We would have to eat a lot of salmon to put on enough body fat so we could survive the next cold Alaskan winter while we hibernated in our den with our mother. What does she mean by our share? Who else is sharing with us? That answer would be clear soon enough. After many sunny days, the summer was indeed drawing to a close and fall was approaching. It was September, and we knew that the salmon would be coming. As our mother had told us, the run of the salmon happened every year. The hordes of glittery silverfish made their long, perilous swim upstream from the salt water to the spawning ground where they had been born 4 years before. There, the females would lay their eggs at river bottom gravel. The males would fertilize the eggs with something called milt. Nobody really understood what drove the fish to make this long, difficult run upriver, but something inside them made the journey irresistible to the salmon, so they battled up the river. Another thing, as the salmon entered the fresh water of the river, they would undergo tremendous physical changes, including changing color from silvery to maroon or red. Of course, the other creatures who live along the river also remembered what September meant along Silver Salmon Creek. And, like us, they were waiting for the run of salmon. When my mother took us down to the river, we were surprised to see how many grizzly bear families were gathering there. It was like a marathon run. Everybody was getting into the competition. This wasn't going to be as easy as we thought at first. There were too many experienced grizzlies going after the same salmon. We soon realized that while my brother and I had a lot to learn, our mother was an expert at catching salmon. She would wait for the outgoing tide to retreat because that was when the water in the creek got very shallow. Then, when the new tide came into the river, the salmon would make their attempt to run up the river to reach the spawning ground. And we would be there. My mother would sit patiently at the edge of the river, waiting for a ripple caused by a salmon swimming upstream. Often, Mom would stand on her hind legs to get a better view of the river as she searched for the next salmon. Sometimes, my brother would stand on his hind legs, imitating Mom looking for a fish. I would stand alongside him too, and watch the river surface. Of course, neither of us were as good at spotting fish as our mother, but we pretended that we were. When my mom saw the ripple, she would race in the river, running about 30 to 40 miles per hour to pounce on the salmon as it swam upstream. Sometimes she missed the fish, but when she caught it, what an explosion! The water would erupt as the fish battled for its life. Sometimes the fish got away. At other times, my mom would grab the fish in her powerful jaws and race out into the river onto the gravel banks to feed us kids. Catching salmon was not all that easy for Mom. Sometimes there were competitors. When Mom found a particularly good spot for catching the salmon as they raced upstream, another grizzly mom just might figure that she should also be able to share in the harvest. Sometimes that female grizzly bear would invade Mom's fishing territory, but Mom knew how to handle that with a fury that was really frightening, to me and my brother at least. She chased away the interloper from her perfect spot. Soon enough, that bear would slink away to find another spot to fish in. After fishing for a spell and catching a good amount of salmon, Mom would stop for a while and reward us with a delicious treat. "Athena, share this piece of fish with your brother," she would say. Then, with our tummies full, my brother Zeus and I would play on the gravel alongside the river until we got drowsy. By then, it was time for Mom to go after another salmon. This time, she would catch one quickly, and it would be time to eat again. When you're a grizzly bear cub, life sure is good. We grizzly bears and the seagulls that were always circling above weren't the only critters who loved to eat salmon. The pine trees around Silver Salmon Creek are also the resting place for another, much scarier fish eater, the great American bald eagle. The first time we saw an eagle, my brother and I were terrified. They are enormous birds. Their body is about 3 feet long and their wingspan about 7 or 8 feet, much bigger than any of us. As a bird of prey, they are powerful and aggressive and kill other smaller animals for food. Also, on the beaches and gravel bars where we were playing, we saw that they are scavengers of dead and dying fish, which made our salmon targets for a snack. There was also another strange group of creatures along the Silver Salmon Creek. They are humans, my mother told us. They stand around together about 100 feet from where we are fishing for salmon. They don't seem to be trying to catch fish, Sue said. They have these 3-legged branches with funny-looking things on top. Yes, I agreed, and they keep looking into the backs of these things for hours. Oh well, my mom said. They don't bother us, and since we're busy fishing and eating salmon, we won't pay attention to them. We didn't. After a few hours of eating fish and playing together, my brother and I were ready for some of Mom's breast milk. We would catch up with her and remind her that we were hungry. Mom would scoop out a shallow depression in the gravel bar and lower herself into it on her back. Tired and hungry, Seuss and I would climb on top of her and begin to feed. After a while, her milk supply was exhausted, and Mom would roll over on her tummy. We would snuggle close, and all 3 of us would take a nap for about an hour. By the time our nap was over, the incoming tide was flooding the gravel bar, and water in the river was too deep for us to catch fish. It went on like this all through the fall. We kept catching and eating fish every day for weeks, as long as the salmon were still in the mouth of the Silver Salmon Creek. After that, the weather started getting very cold, and Mother told us it was nearly time to move back into our den. She called it denning, or hibernation, for a winter nap. So, we followed Mom back into the woods to wait for the next tidal change. Mom was right. By the time the snow started to fall, we were all getting very drowsy. Our metabolism began to slow down, and our body temperature and heart rate dropped drastically. Thanks to our mom, we had eaten enough salmon and other goodies to fatten ourselves up to survive the frozen winter months. So now here we are. The cave is warm and friendly, and I want to keep telling you our story, but I'm just a youngster, and it's hard to stay awake. I guess I'll just close my eyes for a bit. Maybe I'll dream of rivers of salmon leaping over the stones until next spring when the world turns green again.
4 years after my visit, a friend of mine visited the same area that I had been in along Silver Salmon Creek. The bears were still there, catching and eating salmon, and she saw a female bear with light brown hair and 3 cubs. I believe she actually saw Athena, now fully grown, with a family of her own. The cycle of life continues. I'm delighted to report my book was selected second place in the 2019 Photo Book Essay Contest of the Photographic Society of America.